Thanks a lot, and thanks for the 2 extra minutes. Being Italian, we like to talk, so I'll make sure that I'll stick to the extra 2 minutes. So, yes, indeed, I'm going to give you a bit the perspective of the European Commission in this very interesting topic, and actually a bit of context on EU cooperation in HTA. I will look a bit on how this cooperation at European level started, so what happened since now the Commission is active and EU budget is invested in this area. Then we'll make a bit of the points where we are today in this area, the latest development, and more specifically the new, let's say, body, if I could call it this way, the newly established Health Technology Assessment Network. And then, more importantly, say a bit what this network, where actually we would, the network is paving the way, where we want to go. So how do we want to develop, how the network wants to develop further this interesting domain. Here, a thank to Finn for these slides that I think gives a very good overview of what are all the elements that actually led to EU cooperation on health technology assessment, so a bit of context. On the top of the slide there, you see the health program. The health program for us has been really the instrument that could actually have enabled the cooperation between health technology assessment agencies at European level. So through the program, we funded already back in the late 90s a number of projects to facilitate this cooperation. I mean, HTA agencies understood that they were all facing very similar challenges, and even though, of course, the reports process and the recommendation remained a very clear responsibility of national agencies, they understood that the need of talking to each other and sharing information and experience. And that was already back in the late 90s. Then in the early 2000s, so in 2005, we had the first call for project where actually the embryo of what we have today as EUNETA started. So EUNETA was first launched as a project, so a very defined and time-limited task and with a set of defined activities. And this project set the basis for what is today EUNETA and what is today actually the Health Technology Assessment Network. The project of EUNETA then was followed by what we call a joint action. A joint action is another instrument, actually. Somehow it's a more broad, as a broader scope, and it's joint because it's a kind of share ownership between the Commission and Member States representatives. So it's not anymore a project, a very well-defined task, but it's actually a broader scope and a broader overall objective. And the joint action involved basically all member states, actually more than EU member states. Norway and other and other country and regional agencies are actually actively involved in the EUNETA joint action. There was the first one that was up to 2012, and then recognizing the value of this cooperation, we continue to make money, let's say, available for continuing this effort. And so there was a second joint action which is currently ongoing, and Professor Borsolom is actually coordinating, and this is actually, its current contract goes until 2015. But what is important to realize that, again, we value this cooperation, and actually member states representative value equally this cooperation, so much so that the Commission plans in the next health program to again continue to fund this type of cooperation between HTA agencies. So we expect third joint action to be to continue the existing work. Of course, there will be a task of the member states and together with us, with the Commission, to shape up a bit the focus of the next phase, because of course that has to be clear. It's not that since 2000 we are repeating the same things. We are actually moving phase in a stepwise approach to address different phases and address different elements of the overall issue. And I think also from the discussion which are ongoing in EUNETA today and in the Health Technology Assessment Network, the focus of the next phase is very likely to be on more and more piloting things together. So we have been building through the years the scientific cooperation, and so the agreement on methodologies, common approach, sharing information. And now we are in a phase where a number of agencies are actually more and more keen to do things together, at least part of the things together. So that's I believe it's an important message, an important take-home message that gives a bit of the sense of where we are going in the next phase of EU cooperation at on health technology assessment. Now, to support and strengthen further this cooperation, the Commission has basically accompanied this development with the legislative process. We always like to put legislation next to what is what to activities, and we think this is an enabler, and this is actually a strengthening factor. So much so that in the Cross-Border Care Directive, which has been adopted in 2011, the one specific article under the chapter of EU cooperation between member states, there is a specific article, Article 15, on health technology assessment, where basically the article foresees the establishment of what I referred earlier, this health technology assessment network. So the question here may come, what is the difference between the Health Technology Assessment Network and EUNETA, which is as well a network of health technology assessment agencies? Well, I think here we look at two complementary levels of cooperation at European level. EUNETA is working on science, on scientific issue, and is gathering mainly HTA agencies, national agencies, as well as regional agencies. So these are the people that are actually doing HTA at national and regional level. The network, the Health Technology Assessment Network, is actually gathering mainly competent authorities responsible for HTA, mainly ministries of health, actually. So we have a network that involves all, and it's interesting to note, this is a voluntary network, so all member states were free to choose to be in or out, and all of them have actually asked to be in. And that's an important signal we get from on this topic. And so the HTA network somehow has this complete the scientific cooperation with a more strategic political cooperation between member states, which are actually, to a certain extent, the recipient of the recommendation that the EUNETA type of people are actually providing to them. On top of this, I think recognizing the importance of HTA activities, the Commission also continues to support some research work in HTA, and that's the lower part of the slides, where through, before the Framework Research Project, but now the Horizon 2020 program, we still consider to fund some research on HTA issue. I think it's important there also to note that while we understand there are still research challenges to be addressed in HTA, we also want to focus the next phase of research money on more deployment elements, so really try to apply the research fundings, because it's a bit in this view that we are moving on a phase where we want to do more doing things together rather than keep discussing on methodology and academic type of discussion. We really think the sector is mature enough to test and try and pilot new way of doing things, ideally in our view, doing things together. So here just to the two level we have here, the HTA network and the EUNETA, the policy and the science working together in synergy and complementing each other. And that's actually where we are today, where you have this network that has been, the HTA network that has been just set up. Its first meeting was only a few weeks ago. I think it's interesting to note here that also we have decided to associate somehow EMA to this network. So EMA will be regularly invited to the network. And this is also to respond to the call that was done by all the speakers before me and by Professor Razi. I mean, there is a clear understanding that there is the need to bring the two sectors closer together. There is a clear added value, and that's why we want to associate EMA to the work of the activities of the network to respond to the call from the stakeholders and the constituency. So another point which I want to point out is the involvement of stakeholders in all this. And stakeholders are indeed associated to the two levels. So in EUNETA, you probably are familiar, the EUNETA is set up in the second joint action, recognizing the value and the importance of what Jan was saying earlier, of the input of patients, have set up a stakeholders advisory forum, where actually stakeholders representative and representing the main 4 categories, as much as we can actually categorize stakeholders, patient, professional, payers, and industry, these organizations have actually the possibility to appoint, and they actually understand they do, and they provide important feedback, to appoint experts in the different work packages, and they actually get involved in the work of EUNETA at scientific level. In the HTA network, the situation is a bit is a bit different. I mean, there indeed then the stakeholders are associated as observer, but I mean, indeed, it's a new body. It's a body where we are really bringing together for the first time competent authority to work on strategic and political issues. So there has been this stepwise approach that has been adopted, and nevertheless, the 4 categories of stakeholders and the co-chair of the EUNETA Stakeholder Forum are actually as well associated to the Health Technology Assessment Network. So, but now, what is actually the network? And I will skip this slide. Where the network wants to go? What is actually the tomorrow? So, what they have discussed, and that was quite interesting because at its first meeting, the network had, of course, adopted its multi-annual work program and identified 3 kind of deliverables, if I could say so, immediate deliverables. The first one is quite a broad task, which is expected to be adopted at the end of next year. And the network aims at developing a paper on a long-term vision for HTA cooperation at European level. A paper which will look at the scope of technology, whether should we cooperate at European level on pharmaceutical only, medical device, or complex intervention? Where do we want to focus our cooperation? What is the scope of the health technology assessment cooperation at European level? Do we focus on clinical element only, or we actually go broader to other domain? And in the strategic discussion that took place at the meeting, it was pretty clear that, indeed clinical is primary, but a common approach to other domain of HTA, where also the network gave the direction that had to be explored. Of course, all this will be further developed and detailed in this paper, but I think it's important that the strategic line has been already defined in this discussion, and a working group will meet in a few weeks to bring this issue forward. The other deliverable, let's say, of the network will be, and that's very topical to the discussion today, is a reflection paper on the synergy between the regulatory aspect and the HTA needs. So there again, an important message. A lot of activities are ongoing now in this area, and the parallel advice EMA is doing are an extreme good example. EUNETA is as well doing the same thing. I mean, have initiated, of course, has less experience and know-how in this, but this is something that it's on a incremental phase. Considering and recognize the importance of this, the Commission has put additional funding available to make more of this early pilot within the context of a specific tender involving many of EUNETA beneficiaries and building on EUNETA. This is the SEEDS consortium. And I'd like to to bring to your attention the fact that this consortium, which is coordinated by HAS, the French Autorité de Santé, will actually call for expression of interest to company to take part of this early dialogue in the coming weeks. And last but not least, and I'll close here, EUNETA and EMA have also agreed on a joint work plan. When a lot of these topics are actually discussed and agreed, and I think this is well fit with the calls which have been done earlier from previous speakers on getting closer to the 2 sectors, work on a more structured and common view on how we can actually progress in this challenging area. There is another paper that the network should deliver by the beginning of 2015, which aims at facilitating, creating the better condition to work at European level for the benefit of national activities. So how European cooperation can best serve national activities. This is another area where we can rely a lot on lessons from pilots and ongoing activities. Well, I'll close it here, and I thank you for your attention. Looking forward for the discussion today. Thanks.